Okay, so zombies. We've all seen the movies. We know the drill. Hordes of the undead craving brains. But today's deep dive, it's not about outrunning a zombie apocalypse.
Right, we're going deeper. We're exploring the work of psychology professor Kevin Volkan.
And he sees zombies a little differently, huh?
He makes a fascinating argument. Zombies aren't just fictional monsters, they reflect our deepest fears.
Okay, so, like, zombies on the couch? What are we afraid of?
It's more like they hold up a mirror to our anxieties, things we might not even realize we're carrying around.
That's kind of creepy when you think about it. So
Yeah.
where do we even begin with this whole zombie psyche thing?
Volkan suggests we start with the roots of zombie beliefs. Think Africa, Haiti, places steeped in spiritual traditions.
Makes sense. Isn't the word zombie itself, like, from another language?
Exactly. You've got the Yoruba word fumbi, which means spirit. Then there's imvumbi from the Congo, referring to a person in a trance, sometimes even an invisible spirit.
So the modern zombie, it's a blend of all these different cultures and fears.
Exactly. And when you look at Haitian voodoo, there's a distinction between two types of zombies.
Two types. I thought a zombie was a zombie.
Well, we've got the spirit zombie, a soul trapped by sorcery, and then there's the flesh zombie.
Ah, so the spirit zombie is more like, what, a ghost? Someone being controlled?
Right, think of it as a soul under the control of a bukor. But the flesh zombie, that's the one we see in the movies, the reanimated corpse.
The classic, right. But how do they actually make a flesh zombie? I mean, in the lore. Is it just the bite?
It's a little more complicated than a bite. It involves powerful magic, of course, but also potent natural toxins.
Toxins. Like what?
We're talking things like tetrodotoxin found in pufferfish and datura, sometimes called zombie cucumber.
Yeah, those are real things. I thought those were made up for scary stories.
Oh yeah, those are absolutely real. And dangerous too. Tetrodotoxin can paralyze you, even kill you.
No kidding. That's intense. What about that cucumber one?
Datura. That one's known for causing some seriously messed up hallucinations, delirium. Like it detaches you from reality.
So we're talking intense, mind-altering stuff here, not just your average poison.
Exactly. And this is where it gets really unsettling. Because these toxins, they connect to a history of trauma.
Trauma. How so?
Well, think about the fear of being buried alive. It's a common theme in traditional zombification rituals, right?
Yeah, that's terrifying.
And it echoes the horrors of the transatlantic slave trade, that fear of being trapped, helpless.
It's like a parallel. The fear of being buried alive mirrors that experience of being taken from your homeland, shipped across the ocean.
Exactly. That feeling of utter helplessness, losing all control. It's a shared experience, and it feeds into the whole zombie imagery.
Wow. It's almost like the zombie becomes a symbol for the dehumanizing effects of slavery itself.
You're catching on. And this is where things like repetition compulsion and identification with the aggressor come into play.
Whoa, those sound kind of intense. Break those down for me.
So repetition compulsion is the idea that we might repeat or even act out parts of traumatic experiences we've been through. It's like a way to try and gain some control over those experiences.
Like you're replaying it, but this time you're in the driver's seat.
Exactly. And then you've got identification with the aggressor. This one's about how someone who's been abused might start to identify with their abuser. They take on their characteristics as a coping mechanism.
So with zombies, you're saying that people who were enslaved, they might then try to exert control by creating zombies.
It's a really complex, unsettling idea, but it shows just how deep trauma can go. It shapes not just individuals, but entire cultures, beliefs, everything.
This is definitely making me think about zombies in a whole new way. Not just mindless monsters, but symbols of our deepest fears and anxieties. But, we often focus on the fear, the violence, right?
Right.
But Volkan, he also says zombies represent something else.
The mob.
Right, that primal fear of the unpredictable nature of a large group of people, that mob mentality. Yeah, like in the movies when you see that horde closing in, and there's no reasoning with them. There's just no stopping them.
Exactly. That feeling of being totally overwhelmed, surrounded by these forces you can't control, it speaks to our anxieties about social unrest, about the fragility of civilization.
Oh, man. Reminds me of that Freud quote. They will have to admit to themselves the full extent of their helplessness and their insignificance in the machinery of the universe. It's that same vibe.
That feeling of being utterly insignificant in the face of this huge, chaotic world. And it gets even stronger in times of crisis when everything we thought was secure is shattered.
And that's where zombies come in. They embody that chaos, that feeling that anything can happen.
They tap into those primal anxieties about the world, about how easily things can fall apart. But we've talked a lot about zombies as symbols, as reflections of our fears. What about the science? Is there any actual science behind zombification?
Yeah, because so far it's all been psychology culture. But what about nature? Are there things out there that really do turn creatures into, well, zombies?
That's a great question. And as a matter of fact, there are parasites out there that can manipulate their hosts in ways that are straight out of a horror movie. We're talking real life zombification happening in nature. Yeah, nature can be just as creepy as any horror movie. We're talking about parasites that can literally hijack their hosts' nervous systems.
Okay, now you're just messing with me. There's no way that's real.
Oh, it's real. And it's happening all around us. You familiar with cordyceps?
Cordyceps rings a bell. Isn't that some kind of fungus?
Bingo. It's
Oh.
fungus that infects insects, ants in particular.
Okay, this is already freaking me out. How does it work?
So picture this. A tiny spore lands on an ant.
Okay,
This spore, it's like a little seed. It burrows into the ant's body and starts to grow
inside the ant.
inside. And it just keeps growing until it reaches the ant's brain.
Oh, God. That's just awful. Then what?
Then the fungus takes over. It's
Hey.
like something out of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. The ant is no longer in control.
So the ant's a zombie. Like, literally.
Pretty much. The fungus forces the ant to climb up a plant, find a nice juicy leaf, and then clamp down on it with its mandibles. Death grip.
You're kidding. Why?
It's all strategic, really.
Yeah.
See, the ant dies there, clinging to the leaf, and then the fungus, it erupts right out of the ant's head, like something out of Alien.
Okay, that image is going to be with me for a while, but why go through all that trouble?
To spread more spores, of course. Infect more ants. It's the circle of life, zombie style.
I don't know if I call it life at that point. More like death on a stick.
Gruesome but effective. And cordyceps isn't the only parasitic puppet master out there. Ever heard of Toxoplasma gondii?
Toxoplasma gondii. Vaguely. Isn't that the one that has something to do with cats?
You got it. It's a parasite that infects all sorts of warm-blooded animals, even humans.
Humans, too. Now you got my attention.
But here's the thing, Toxoplasma gondii, it loves cats. They're like the ultimate host. It's where the parasite reproduces.
Okay, so what's it doing us, then?
Well, it uses us and other animals to get back to cats. See, it can actually change the behavior of infected rodents like rats and mice.
Change their behavior. How?
It makes them less afraid of cats. Some studies even suggest it makes them attracted to the smell of cat pee.
So it's like they want to get eaten. That's messed up.
Messed up, but effective. The parasite gets back to its happy place. The cat. But here's the thing. Studies suggest that a good chunk of the human population has been infected with Toxoplasma gondii at some point.
Wait, seriously?
Yes.
So you're saying there could be this parasite messing with our brains right now?
Okay, hold on. It's not quite like that. Most people, they don't even know they're infected, no symptoms or anything, but
You're killing me with the suspense here.
there's some evidence that even in humans, Toxoplasma gondii might be doing some subtle manipulating.
Subtle how? Like, what's it going to make us do suddenly crave cat food?
We're talking more like maybe taking more risks, having slower reaction times. There's even a possible link to schizophrenia, though that's still being studied. Schizophrenia. Seriously. From a cat parasite.
It's a possibility. It shows just how complex these interactions are between our brains, our environment, and the tiny creatures that live inside us. And the thing is, this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Okay, so we've got parasites hijacking brains, turning creatures into zombie slaves. But what about something a little closer to home? Something that actually infects the human brain directly. I'm talking about viral encephalitis.
Now, there's a topic that hits close to home. Encephalitis is no joke. We're talking inflammation of the brain, and the effects can be devastating.
Okay, I'm with you. But how does a brain infection turn you into, well, you know?
Think of it this way. Encephalitis messes with your brain's wiring. And depending on which wires get crossed, things can get really strange really fast.
Strange how.
We're talking fever, headaches, confusion, even seizures in some cases. But it can go further.
Further how?
We're talking personality changes, aggression, even altered states of consciousness.
Okay, so that's definitely entering zombie territory. But what kind of viruses cause this encephalitis thing? You might be surprised to learn that one of the most common culprits is something you probably have in your own body. Herpes simplex virus.
Wait, you mean like cold sores?
The one and only. There are actually a few different types of HSV. HSV-1, the one that usually causes cold sores, can also infect the brain.
Get out. No way. It does what to the brain?
He likes to hang out in the temporal lobes, those areas that control memory, language, even your personality.
Okay, that does not sound good.
Not good at all. And then there's HSV-2.
Let me guess. That one's even worse.
It usually causes genital herpes, but it can also cause encephalitis, and when it does, it can lead to some serious neurological problems. We're talking nerve damage, paralysis. It's not pretty.
Man, I am never looking at a cold sore the same way again. This is insane.
And we're not done yet. Remember how we were talking about those zombie-like behaviors? Well, there's a rare neurological disorder that's like the textbook example, Kluver-Bucy syndrome.
Kluver-Bucy syndrome. Never heard of it.
It's caused by damage to specific parts of the brain, and the symptoms are, well, there's something else.
Like, give me the rundown.
Okay, are you ready for this? We're talking hyperorality, basically, an intense need to put things in your mouth.
Okay, that's a little weird, but babies do that, right?
True, but in Kluver-Bucy syndrome, it's not just babies. And it's not just putting things in their mouths, it's everything, edible or not. And then there's this thing called hypermetamorphosis.
Hyper what now?
Hypermetamorphosis. It's like this intense fascination with objects, but not in a normal way. Like someone with this syndrome might become fixated on a doorknob and try to eat it.
Okay, now that's just not right.
Nope, not at all. And then, to top it all off, there's the aggression. People with Kluver-Bucy syndrome, they can get really aggressive, even violent, especially if you try to stop them from doing something they want to do, like, eating a doorknob.
Okay, I see where you're going with this. Insatiable hunger, bizarre fixations, aggression. It's all starting to sound a little too familiar. What else?
Oh, we're not even close to done. There's also hypersexuality, basically an increased interest in sex, and not always in appropriate ways. And then the emotional roller coaster. Emotional blunting, where you don't really react to anything. And then emotional lability, where your moods swing all over the place.
So it's like the whole zombie package, right there in one messed up neurological disorder.
Yeah.
What causes this Kluver-Bucy syndrome anyway? Is it contagious? Is this the real-life zombie virus I need to be worried about?
Here's the thing. It's not contagious. Usually it's caused by damage to the temporal lobes of the brain, and that can happen from a bunch of things. Head trauma, stroke, infections like encephalitis.
So even though it's not contagious, there could still be a connection between those brain infections we were talking about, like HSV encephalitis, and this Kluver-Bucy syndrome.
You got it. It's all connected. And the really wild thing is Dr. Volkan, the guy we were talking about earlier, he actually treated a patient who had a lot of these same symptoms, a guy named John.
John, what was his story?
Tragic, to be honest. Poor John had a rough life. Suffered a severe brain injury as a kid car accident. And it caused all sorts of problems. Developmental delays, behavioral issues.
So he was already facing an uphill battle because of this brain injury.
Exactly. And as if that wasn't enough, he had another accident later on. Another head injury. This time the damage was to his other frontal lobe.
So now both sides of his brain are messed up. The frontal lobes, that's where all the important stuff happens, right?
Planning, decision-making, impulse control, all gone. John regressed, went back to an almost childlike state, couldn't speak, couldn't reason, and he developed a severe case of that hyperorality we were talking about.
Oh, man, the poor guy.
Yeah, John's story, it's a reminder of just how fragile our brains really are. One little thing goes wrong, and it can change everything.
Makes you wonder, what if those little things, what if they happen on a larger scale? Like, what if there really was a virus out there, or some kind of environmental factor that could cause these kinds of changes in people's behavior?
Now you're asking the million-dollar question. Could a real-life zombie apocalypse actually happen? It's a question that's haunted humanity for centuries.
So we've explored ancient beliefs about zombies, those creepy mind-controlled parasites, and even the brain-altering power of viruses.
We've really gone from the supernatural to the scientific.
And through it all, there's this one question that just won't go away. Could a zombie apocalypse really happen? I mean, for real?
It's the question, isn't it? And the answer is, well, it's complicated.
You're not going to give me a straight answer, are you?
Let's just say it depends who you ask.
Okay, so some people think it's possible.
Some researchers argue that we can't completely rule out the possibility of, say, a new pathogen emerging, something that triggers these widespread behavioral changes.
See, that's what gets me. We've already talked about how certain infections, like HSV, can lead to encephalitis, and that can cause some seriously scary behavioral changes.
Right, and then there's John's case, Dr. Volkan's patient, the one with the head injuries. It's a stark reminder of how dramatically brain damage can alter behavior to the point where it starts to resemble what we imagine when we think zombie.
Exactly. The lack of impulse control, the aggression, that insatiable hunger, it's all there. But John's condition wasn't contagious, right?
All right, it stemmed from those specific injuries.
So that's different from, say, a virus that spreads through a population.
Exactly. But, and this is where it gets interesting, what if there was a virus or even some environmental factor that could inflict that kind of damage on a massive scale?
You're talking about a virus that essentially zombifies people.
It might sound like science fiction, but there are scientists who've explored this very idea.
Really? Like who?
Well, there's Harvard psychiatrist Stephen Schlossman. He wrote a fictional book, The Zombie Autopsies, where he imagines just that scenario.
Okay, I'm adding that to my reading list.
Yeah.
Though maybe not right before bed. So, what causes the zombie outbreak in his book?
A virus. But not just any virus. This one was engineered.
Engineered. You mean man-made?
Man-made and malicious. It was designed to target specific areas of the brain. The parts that control reason, language, social inhibition, all the things that make us human.
So it basically shuts down our higher brain functions, turning us into those classic, slow-moving, flesh-hungry zombies.
Exactly. And in the book, this virus, it's highly contagious and almost always fatal. It's a worst-case scenario, for sure. But it makes you think, doesn't it?
It does. But even if a real-life zombie virus never shows up, I think just the idea of zombification, it forces us to confront some pretty big questions.
Absolutely. It makes us think about our own mortality, our vulnerability to things we can't control. And it even makes us question what it means to be human in the first place.
Right. Like if there was a way to cure someone who'd been zombified, even if they weren't exactly the same as they were before, would we have to try?
It's a huge ethical dilemma, and there's no easy answer.
Definitely not. Well, I think we've given our listeners a lot to chew on today. We've covered everything from ancient myths to cutting-edge science, and it's clear that zombies, they're more than just monsters in a movie. They're a reflection of our deepest fears, our anxieties about the world, and even about ourselves. So the next time you watch a zombie movie, don't just cover your eyes and hope for the best. Think about what those zombies represent. Think about the what-ifs. And who knows, maybe you'll learn a little something about yourself along the way.
I couldn't have put it better myself.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive. A huge thanks to our expert for joining us and for sharing your insights. And to our listeners, thanks for coming along for the ride. We'll see you next time, same place, for another deep dive into the mysteries of the mind and beyond.